Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Is it an episode? Another kind of installment or another month or another Azure Container Apps community live stream. My name is Anthony, and I'm joined by Nick, Sophia, and Carrie today. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Let's do a round of introductions. So, Nick, you want to start?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the call today. My name is Nick Greenfield. I'm a product manager here at Microsoft. I'm working on the Dapr project. And lately, I've been focusing a lot on how Dapr integrates into the Azure Container Apps service.
Hey y'all, I'm Sophia. I'm a PM on Azure Container Apps. I've been working a lot on triaging our public GitHub and making some UX improvements in the portal.
Hey everybody, I'm Carrie. So I just recently joined a PM team for ACA about 2 weeks ago. Before that, I was on the functions PM team for about 2 years. I'm starting to look into networking experiences in ACA and looking how we can improve that. So if you have any feedback for that, let me know.
Awesome. So today, as you kind of saw on the screen there, as I unprofessionally left up Carrie's screen, we're going to talk about Dapr. So Nick is going to start us off with that. And then after that, we're going to do our usual community highlights, as well as go over some roadmap stuff. So with that, Nick, you want to kick us off with, tell us all about Dapr?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. Let me know if you all can see. Can you see my screen?
For it. Hold on, what's that? Yep.
Okay.
It is up.
Awesome. Well, I already introduced myself, but again, my name is Nick Greenfield, product manager at Microsoft, working on Dapr and specifically how Dapr integrates into Azure Container Apps, which is exactly what we're going to talk about here today. But before we get into what Dapr is and the benefits of using it, I want to briefly touch on why the Dapr project exists and some of the problems that it's trying to solve. So as we're probably mostly aware, distributed microservice-based architectures have become very popular as of recent, right? Due to many reasons. One, they help reduce single points of failure. They allow for independent scaling. It provides more flexibility with the types of programming languages and technologies that you can use based on a particular dev team's familiarity or what's most suitable to solve a given problem. And that list of benefits goes on and on. But what I think is often overlooked with microservice architectures are the challenges that are introduced, or the complexities when working on an application like that, especially the developer challenges that they encounter when having to architect and implement a system like a microservice architecture. So on my screen here, I have a list of some of these microservice development challenges. We don't have to go through these one by one. Just know at a high level, these challenges primarily revolve around how microservices intercommunicate with each other securely and reliably, how they persist and retrieve state, configuration, secrets, and how they're monitored and observed to make sure that each service is working as it should, end to end. And so that's really why the Dapr project was created, to help address some of those kind of complexities and developer challenges. And so, at its core, Dapr is an open source project. It's part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and it provides developers with a set of capabilities that help simplify implementation of common patterns that are found in microservice architectures. And so here you can see this row of building blocks, as they're referred to, are those common patterns that you would find in a microservice app. And so these capabilities can be picked and choose by developers depending on project requirements. They're incrementally adoptable. You can choose one, choose all of them, mix and match. Again, depending on the problem that you're trying to solve. The nice thing about these building blocks that Dapr provides is that one, they address a lot of those challenges that I was referring to on the previous slide, but they're built on industry best practices. So they have a lot of features in each of these capabilities that they support. And we'll take a look specifically at what I mean by best practices in a moment when we double click on some of these in detail. So Dapr has a seamless integration into Azure Container Apps, a simplified interaction model. Dapr is architected as a sidecar process that runs in tandem with your microservices. And in Container Apps, all of the management of that sidecar and the versioning of Dapr, all of that is handled on your behalf as part of the platform. You don't have to do any of that. Really, all you have to do is opt in to using Dapr in ACA, and you are immediately able to leverage the developer APIs that you see here on the screen. So what I want to do is spend a couple minutes. We'll take a look at some of these capabilities and building blocks in detail, and how you might use them and bring them into your applications. The first one that I wanted to highlight, one of my favorites, is the service invocation API. And so this is really around how your microservices or your container apps can, one, discover each other and call each other synchronously with some best practices like automatic MTLS and retries. So that's what you see here on the screen. I have my ACA environment. I have 2 container apps running in my environment, each of them paired with the Dapr sidecar. And so my application would make a call to the Dapr sidecar, letting it know I want to call application B. And so that communication happens between sidecars, and you automatically get that MTLS encryption end-to-end and resiliency. You get some retries in case there was a transient failure. Dapr is going to retry on your behalf. And you get that for free. You don't have to configure that in your application code at all. And so taking a look at, I think most of us here are developers. We enjoy writing code. So how would I actually leverage this building block in my application? So we have a C# example here where I am instantiating a new HTTP client, right? So you might be already familiar with this. Your apps might already be using these clients in your code today, and that's perfectly okay. You can still use the Dapr service invocation building block. And really all that's needed is, you can see on this line here that I've highlighted, to add Dapr service invoke, I just need to add a special Dapr header to my request. And this is the Dapr app ID of the target service that I'm calling. And then the last change that I have to do is make sure I update my base URL. Hopefully these are stored as environment variables. Instead of calling that target service directly, I'm actually going to target my sidecar. And so I'm saying, hey, Dapr sidecar, target app B, and still hit the endpoint that I was hitting before, in this case, the orders endpoint. And with that, I'm using Dapr for service invocation. And again, I get that added security and resiliency on top of it. The next building block that I want to show a high-level overview, again, it's still microservice communication, but in this case, it's asynchronous communication, which is the publish and subscribe building block. In this case, you have a container app that is publishing an event to a message broker, to a topic or a queue. In the screen here, I'm using Azure Service Bus as my message broker of choice. And then I have my container app B, which is my subscriber, that's able to take those messages off that queue or topic. And if we look at how my code can leverage this capability, in this example, I'm using the Dapr SDKs. There's a variety of language-specific SDKs that the Dapr project provides to make your developers' lives a lot simpler to use these capabilities. And so here I'm instantiating a new client, here the first line there. And then it's as simple as really just calling the publish event async method. And in this case, I'm actually only passing 3 params. One is the component name. So this is a configuration that I've set up that defines what my message broker is. So in the previous slide, I had Azure Service Bus. So I'd have a configuration file somewhere in my repository that defines Azure Service Bus connection information as my message broker that I want to publish to. And this can be easily swapped out for another message broker, depending on the environment, whether it's local development or some other cloud environment. And the nice thing about this is I don't actually have to change any of my application logic, right? It's a configuration file that I'm swapping out, and I'm still writing to the name of this component, which is always the same across those environments, which here is order pub sub. Second param is the topic or the queue that I'm going to publish to, and then the event data, the message that I'm actually sending. The last building block that I want to just highlight, again, this is another one that extremely popular, is the observability building block. So in this case, this is a nice addition to the service invocation and pub sub APIs. Dapr uses OpenTelemetry Collector, which again is automatically deployed and configured in your ACA environment, and is able to push end-to-end distributed traces to an application insights. So you can get that end-to-end trace information between all your service invocation or pub sub API calls in your application. So that's just a high-level overview of some of the three building blocks that I just chose at random. I tend to be a little biased. Those are my favorite. There's a lot more capabilities I encourage everyone to go and experiment with. But I want to touch also on some of the roadmap. I think we get a lot of questions around, like, what can we expect to see next with Dapr in ACA? And so I pulled a couple items here. One is as a couple weeks ago, I think early March, Dapr 1.10 was released. There's a lot of new exciting capabilities, and I encourage you to go take a look. But really providing that version update in ACA, this is actually in progress now as we speak. It's rolling out. I can see already some environments are already using this version of Dapr. So this will be available in the very near future to everyone. Next is the resiliency, Dapr resiliency. This is the ability to define resiliency policies for patterns like retries, timeouts, circuit breakers, and apply those all to your Dapr API calls. And this is a capability that is getting a lot of traction in the open source project. And so, defining the right experience and bringing this into ACA and providing that capability there is a top priority. Next is the easy component creation. This is really around how to optimize those components that I mentioned when I had in that previous slide, that service bus component that I configured as a YAML file in my repo. How do we make that really optimal and easy for customers just to say, I have an instance of, let's say, service bus in my subscription. I just want to point to it and have the platform and Dapr create that component file for me. I don't have to go in there and actually define all the connection details myself. And then lastly, workflow. Dapr workflow, this is another capability that just came out in Dapr 1.10. It won't be available in the 1.10 release in ACA, but it will be something that will come soon enough. This enables you to orchestrate long-running, fault-tolerant, stateful applications via Dapr in ACA. And then I think what I want to touch on before I show some of these samples in depth is, like, can I get started with Dapr and ACA if I'm not using it already? And this sounds interesting. Well, we have documentation, Dapr and aka.ms/Dapr and ACA. This is the Dapr integration doc in ACA. So you can expect to see all things Dapr, how things from the open source translate to Dapr and ACA, and what's supported and what's on the roadmap, things like that. This is a great doc to go through if you haven't seen it already. And then there's some getting started samples. These are quite new, fresh off the press. They're currently, these links will bring you to GitHub repositories where you can find these samples today. We're in the process of really fully documenting them and publishing them on Azure Docs. But these are a great place to get started with Dapr if you want to just see the Dapr capabilities from a local development standpoint, and then deployed into Azure Container Apps. And actually, I'm going to switch over to my browser here. Sorry for the inception screen, but if you were to go to the aka.ms Dapr to ACA link, it's going to bring you to this Azure samples repo page that's filtered by a tag. And here are all of those samples that we have authored for you to get started. So there's 3 different scenarios in here today. They're primarily around the capabilities that I showed. So you'll see that there's a service bus pub sub example, there's a service invocation example, and then there's a bindings example. And we offer these in 3 different language flavors, Node, C#, and Python. And so if we just take a look at one of these in depth real quick, just to give you an idea of what these are, what these do. Let's pick one. If I can just find one. Let's pick this guy. So here's that repo. You'll clone it locally. And the idea is it sets up the scenario. In this case, this is the event-driven bindings sample, where I have a cron job as a Dapr component that's sending an event every 10 seconds to my container app service. Let's accompany with a Dapr sidecar, and then it's outputting via the Dapr output binding that data into an Azure Postgres database. And so you'll notice that in these steps here, it shows you how to actually run this application locally. So you can see that everything working end-to-end on your local dev machine. But then it's going to take this a step further and say, all right, well, how do I take this solution that I have running on my dev machine and deploy it into container apps? And so that's the next section here. And we actually use a tool, if you haven't heard of it already, it's called the Azure Dev CLI. It's a great tool for getting code from a local development to the cloud super, super quick. In this case, you can actually use a single CLI command, and it's going to provision everything for you in ACA. And how it does that is it actually looks at your bicep in your repository. So it's going to provision all of your infrastructure, and then it's going to build your image and deploy your image to your infra that I had just created. So the nice thing about these samples is all of the bicep is here for you to look at and reference. They use managed identity for authentication and things like that. So highly suggest going through some of these the bicep here in detail. And when I think I did one right before, so I actually deployed this sample that we're looking at now prior to this call. Again, it's a single CLI command. You can see it will provision all of my infra, and then in the portal, you can see everything here is created for me. And so I can actually go in, look at my environment. I can check to see if my Dapr components and things were created as they should be, and things like that. So it's really good, really great getting started example. I highly recommend checking out those. And we have a couple, we have those 3 scenarios today, and we have some more on the way. That's what I have for you. Thanks for having me on today's call.
That is awesome, Nick. Woo.
Sorry about that.
Gotta love the inception.
Yeah.
That is great. So we had a couple of questions come in. So one question. Let's take a look at it. So Camilo would like to ask, would like to know whether or not there's any plans to support Windows containers on container apps. And I think I can take that. So we don't have any plans to support Windows containers. We would love to know what your use cases are for them, though. So if you can actually navigate over to our GitHub repo. So let me see if I can find the link for that. So if you can go over to our GitHub repo, there should already be an issue there about Windows containers. We'd love to have you share your scenario there so that we can better understand what you need to do. Awesome. Let's see if there's anything else. And we're seeing some love for the Azure Dev CLI. That's always nice to see.
Yeah, big fan of the Dev CLI.
Yeah, it's great. It's just run one command, go get a coffee, and then you come back and your app is deployed. It's amazing.
Hooray.
Yeah. All right. So up next, how about we look at some community highlights? Carrie, let me add your screen. Yeah, take it away.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Anthony. So for first one that we want to talk about from community highlights is actually one from some familiar faces. So this is actually a talk given by Nick, who just gave a presentation earlier during this call.
Yeah, I know that guy.
And Kendall. I'm not familiar, but no, just kidding. So this is Nick and Kendall's talk from DaprCon in late 2022. And this is a great little video to watch if you want to learn more about why Dapr, what does it do, and also they give a quick overview of what is Azure Container Apps and what role does Dapr play in ACA scenarios. In addition, Nick does give a quick demo on Dapr Resiliency OSS. Things might have changed a bit since then, but this does give an overview of the feature and what they're looking at for the future. Next up, we have a great article from Matt Mazzola on how to build a scalable background processor using Azure Container Apps. So here, Matt, he sets up a microservice architecture where users interact with the website, which then generates SQL entry or sends data to storage queue. And then these messages and database entries are then processed by background processes, all while scaling is handled by Kata. So if this is a pattern that you're looking to learn more about or that you think you might be interested in playing around with, this is a great article to look into. In addition, Matt does have his GitHub repo down here below for getting up and started quickly, as well as a video demonstration of the application, which is about 3 minutes. So if you're like, hey, I'm interested, but I want to know a bit more, great place to start. Next up, we have a GitHub repo template from Hirofumi. So this is a really easy to deploy template for a container app with a containerized Azure Functions runtime. So if you've ever wanted a lot of goodness of a functions programming model, but want to leverage the benefits of ACA, such as when building microservices or just wanting a longer running async function, this is a great place to start, as Hirofumi's template creates all of the bits necessary to get you up and running, including things like the storage account, which is necessary for the function app, regardless of if you're running an ACA. Next up, we have a video from Marcel and Will. Will is a customer engineer from the Fast Track team here at Microsoft. And he gives a really good overview of what are container apps, what can we build with them, as well as going into the container apps environment. So if you're looking for a refresher, or if you're new to container apps and you want to learn more, this is a great place to start. This first 20 minutes will give you a lot of insight. But in addition, he also goes into a really great demonstration of how you can leverage GitHub Actions to really easily deploy and then leverage multiple revisions for things like A/B testing and blue-green deployments. So if you're interested in GitHub Actions with ACA, or you want to learn more about the scenarios that you can go through with revisions, this is a great video to look at. The next one here. So there's been a lot of buzz in the community lately around ChatGPT, OpenAI, AI technologies in general. Geert has put together a really great video here on an application that he created for a tweet generator on Azure Container Apps. So here you can see he asks for a prompt, gives a sentiment, and then this tweet generator will generate a tweet. So a funny Kubernetes tweet. Kubernetes, take the hassle out of managing containers, because who has time to open and close them individually? Hashtag Kubernetes jokes. You can decide if that's funny or not, but it is really cool, a little cool tool. If you're like me, and sometimes when you go to post things, you're like, what should I post? I don't know. This is a great way to get started there. And what's really great about this video that Geert has put together is he goes through all the different code pieces, and he goes through key elements and really talks about them, explains them in depth, so you understand what exactly is going on. And then as well, he goes through the UX to show you the flow that you can go through. He also does have a repo, a GitHub repo for the code that he goes through in his video. Next up is an article by Hiroyuki on how to run a Spring MVC web app in ACA. I can't read Japanese. Some of you guys might be able to. But if not, the commands here are pretty straightforward and easy to follow. And Translate does do a pretty good job of looking into the descriptions if you do need that. But yeah, if you're looking into Spring MVC web apps in ACA, this is a great place to go. Next up, we have 2 blog posts from Pamela Fox. She's actually a familiar name. We shared some of her articles, her blog posts in our last set of community highlights, but there's 2 more that we want to share this time around. She has one here on deploying containerized fast API app to Azure Container Apps, and then another one as well on containerized Flask apps in ACA. So if either of these scenarios are things that are of interest to you, definitely great places to go and check out. Next up, we have a great blog post from Martin. He's another fast track engineer here at Microsoft. And here he goes in depth into the pattern of how to set up an ACA environment with an internal accessibility level and setting up an app gateway in front of it using Terraform. So if you're looking into inbound networking scenarios, this is a great article, great blog post to look at. And Martin does a really good job of providing diagrams of all the different things that he's creating, as well as explaining all the different components and why he's setting them up the way he is. So this is, if you're wanting to learn more about these patterns, this is a great place to look into it. He does also have a working GitHub repository that you can go to get up and started pretty quickly. And then last but not least, we're talking about Datadog. So monitor Azure Container Apps with Datadog. If you've ever had trouble getting an idea of like what is the state and the health of your container app in ACA, this is a great little article to go to. It tells how to send logs, metrics, traces to Datadog in order to get a better idea of your application. And some of the things that go into are collecting traces and logs directly from your container apps, monitoring traffic volume for unusual activity, detecting cold start and container restarts, and tracking resource usage and costs across all containerized applications that you have. So with that, I think that's it for community highlights today. But I think, Anthony, take it away.
That's great. Thanks so much, Carrie. And like last time, I will try to compile all of these links into some sort of a GitHub gist or something like that. And then we'll share that in the show notes in the YouTube recording as well. We'll try to tweet it out. We'll try to tweet it out as well. So we have one question here from Kevin about managed identities, whether we can use managed identities, and I assume this is system assigned managed identities as well as user assigned managed identities to pull images from Azure Container Registry. And the answer is yes. Actually, I can try sharing my screen and show you where the instructions are. One moment. Yes, that was made possible a few months ago. About a week or two after we GA'd, we made it possible to do this. So if you head on over to our documentation, and we can share the link to that here. So this is the short link to our documentation, aka.ms/containerapp/docs. And if you go there, I believe we have an article here. If you search for probably identity. And we go through how you can set up image pull using a managed identity. This is both a user assigned or a system assigned managed identity, and using either the Azure portal or the command line. So go ahead and check that out.
Are you sharing your screen or?
Oh, am I sharing
my screen?
Oh,
yeah, you're sharing my screen still. So.
I'm just a terrible host today.
Nah,
this is the screen. So what I meant was that you can actually go up here, search for identity, and then over here you'll be able to find an article on how to do this with the portal and the command line. Awesome. Cool. And then up next, I think we want to talk about Roadmap. And Sophia, you want to take that away?
Sure thing. And that's got my screen up. Awesome. So yeah, we've got lots of stuff on our roadmap. We're excited to be sharing stuff. A lot of the things that we've been working on are coming out end of March, early April. So there's the whole UDR support for smaller subnets, and I want to say Key Vault support are coming out in early April. Key Vault seems to be coming out in end of March. We're working on a lot of stuff for the end of this quarter and then for build. And is there anything specific folks have questions on or anything?
Yeah, so we have a lot of stuff coming out. I think by the next webcast next month, we're actually going to have quite a few things, hopefully, that we can talk about. So yeah, a lot of these things are in progress. We hope to have them done by the end of March or early April. And if not, we'll update the dates in there. Cool. And I think one of the items on that list is the GA of Azure Monitor support. So I can quickly do a walkthrough about that experience. We hope to announce that in about a week or two. The portal is already being rolled out to remove the preview tag. So it's pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, hopefully the right screen this time. And this is a container app environment. And we can go down here and see that we have logging options. I think for this environment, I already have it enabled. So with Azure Monitor support, you no longer have to use just log analytics for your logging. You can send your logs and metrics pretty much anywhere else using Azure Monitor. So you can go ahead and choose Azure Monitor. I've already done that. And then if you navigate over to the diagnostic settings, I don't have anything configured right now, but if you go add a setting, you can name it something, and you can choose to send all logs. And you can choose to send it to a log analytics workspace. So you don't have to choose between using log analytics or something else. You can actually use both log analytics and anything else that's available in Azure Monitor. And you can also choose a storage account to output your logs to, as well as an event hub to stream to stream your logs out to. So very flexible there. And down here, you can also select a partner solution. I don't have anything set up in this subscription here, but if I go ahead and open up the documentation, you can see that we have quite a few different integrations here that we can take advantage of. So so a lot more options for your logs coming up very, very soon. Cool, and I think we might have one more question here. So Camila would like to know if there are any plans to remove the restrictions around the RAM being twice as much as the CPU. So I think possibly, yes. So we're evaluating options to do that. So hopefully we'll be able to do something about that soon. And we're also looking into increasing the amount of RAM and basically memory and CPU that you have access to in your container apps. So look forward to something in the near future. Cool. And with that, I don't see any more questions. We learned a lot about Dapr today. We saw some roadmap stuff. We learned a little bit about Azure Monitor. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Nick, Sophia, and Carrie for joining the stream. And actually, I do have one more thing that I want to mention. So next month, we're still working out a date to try to figure out when we can have the stream, because we have a couple of events happening on the week of our scheduled stream next month. So one that I do want to mention is the Azure Developer.net Day. Hopefully I got that right. And if you navigate over to this link, you'll learn a little bit more about what we're planning. There's a lot of information that's still to come, but it's a full day of Azure for .NET developers. So check that out. Sign up for Save the Date. And yeah, that's about a month from now on April 5th, at least on the Pacific time zone. So, and then we'll announce on Twitter and also, hopefully other places as well when we're going to have the next stream. And until then, and again, I didn't share my screen again. What the heck is going on? I'm just terrible at this. This is the page I was talking about right here. Yeah, so check that out. Lots of things going on. This page should get filled out really soon. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.